you want to go next, and we'll go for it. So Curtis, take us away.
All right. Well, Amber, we spoke a few weeks ago. Fight week is here. Obviously, a lot of fight fans have this fight with Larissa Pacheco circled as a potential fight of the night. I guess where's your mindset in a few hours ahead of fight night, and how pumped are you to get back in there?
Oh, I'm excited. It's so nice to have so many fights like on the docket. I think that's one of the hardest things for fighters. You never know when the next fight's going to be. So this format is amazing. I'm super honored and grateful to be here. I can't wait to get into the cage with Larissa. Everyone's like, oh, you're an underdog. You're an underdog. It's cool, I already knew I was going to be an underdog in this entire tournament. My friends have been telling me I'm the dark horse. Nobody really knew who I was coming in here, which I had to let them know, and I'm here to just let them know again.
And I got to ask you too, I don't want to touch too much on your last fight, but there was a post, I think it was on the PFL MMA social media, where they showed you kind of reacting to your last win, how much that meant to you and your coaches and all that. Just kind of talk to us a little bit about that and how much your team has really meant to you during this whole process.
My coach, Kieran Fitzgibbons, my head coach. I also work with Gilbert Melendez over at El Nino. I've got, our Muay Thai coach, Mao, Gaston Bolaños, Adam Piccolotti, and these are guys that have, seen me from the bottom to the top. Obviously I had a really tough run when I was with different organizations, and now I'm back on the up and up, but those are the guys that pick me up off the mats when I'm crying, when I'm having a hard time. They're the ones that snapped me back into it and taught me I needed to take accountability. And my coach Kieran, my head coach in particular, when we lose, he takes that loss. He doesn't blame us he takes that. He's the one that sheds tears at night. He's the one that's up late at night. That lives in his head. Our wins are ours and our losses are his, is something he'll always say. So to have it all come together like that and be able to share that moment with him, extremely emotional for me.
Last question for me, as somebody that's fought in other organizations outside the PFL, like Invicta, what do you feel like are some of the next steps that need to take place to keep growing women's MMA, right? Keep growing that segment of the sport.
I think the exposure, I think what PFL is doing and what Invicta's doing, and just making sure that we have a platform, the pre-fight stuff, the pumping out our social media, all these things. I think it's really important that we get just as much exposure as the guys do, because let's face it, the guys get a lot of exposure. The women are definitely learning to promote themselves and do what they've got to do, whether it's social media, mostly social media. I think women do it way better than men do, but I think the exposure and just, pumping up these fights, putting us on main cards, co-main events, things like that, main events are really going to just help us as women grow in the sport.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, on this date with Fight Bananas. We're saying 2 months ago, I know you don't want to stick in it, I know life moves fast and we're on a fight week for another fight, but that was the greatest debut in PFL history. Did you get to sit in it for a little bit? Did you breathe that moment of that's a game changer?
Yeah, these guys were actually getting mad at me. They're like, you need to take this, right. You need to be so happy about this. But for me, I already knew the job wasn't done. I knew deep down Larissa was next. I don't know how I did, but I just knew that Larissa was going to be next, that my next fight was going to be tough, and I already told myself going into this that every fight was going to be a really, really tough fight. So I maybe didn't live in it as long as everyone wanted me to, because I just knew the job wasn't done, and you just don't want to ride too many highs too high or too many lows too low, and I think it just keeps you, especially in this tournament format, mentally ready for what's next.
Right. You mentioned Larissa. Have you thought about, in a weird way, if everything goes well, Friday night, you beat Larissa, she still could be in the playoffs. You might even have to beat her twice to win the championship. Have you thought about that at all?
Yeah, I've seen the season. Obviously, I'm a huge Larissa Pacheco fan. I'm completely honored to be in the cage with her. I have nothing but respect for her. I think she's sweet. We've run into each other throughout fight week last week or last time. But same thing for me. If everything goes well for her and, it's a fight anything can happen. I could still end up in the playoffs. We don't know how this is all going to turn out with the points format. I did watch the season where she lost to Kayla, still ended up in the playoffs and ended up fighting Kayla again. So I think it's exciting. I think not knowing or giving this out, that Martrina, she could get it, me and her could go again, you know, which I know that that's what she wants. And I know that's what she's banking on. Like, nobody's forgetting about her in the wings, you know? So I think it's interesting. And I think it keeps kind of the fire, because you can kind of plateau a little bit just doing the same thing all the time, fight after fight. And I think this keeps it like the spark going for us as fighters. So yeah, it's interesting and I'm excited for it.
Love it. Last thing for me, I mentioned earlier as well too, 3 L's now with 4 wins. What was the thing that changed? Was it one thing? Was it multiple things? What was that one thing that maybe clicked for you that now you're on the ascent?
It was multiple things, definitely. I, got some things that were really holding me back in my life got out of a bad relationship, just changed all my personal stuff. I started training like a professional, took my body, the way, I looked into more account, because there were some things like, as women, body dysmorphia is a real thing. So physically, when you're not feeling like you're up to par with some of these women that you're stepping in with, can definitely mess with your mental. I started taking a lot of accountability for myself. Where was I slacking on the mats? What wasn't I doing? How many excuses was I making? I kind of strayed away from training with smaller chicks and training with the guys, which guys, they take the emotion out of it. They're like, hey, are you crying right now? Because you need to snap into it and get this work done, and once you get into the car you can go cry there. And I think that changed a lot, and me and my coaches kind of sat down. My coach was like, look, I'm not holding your hand. We're not doing certain things anymore. I don't care how bad of a time you're having. Like, you're gonna have a meltdown. It's gonna be 5 minutes. You're gonna go in that locker room. You're gonna cry. You're gonna wipe your face. You're gonna get back on the mat. You're gonna finish your sessions. You're gonna finish your days. And my mental coach, Richard Hart, my hypnotherapist, and some other sports psychologists I've worked with as well, but right now I'm with Richard Hart, changed me, because visualize, you hear John Jones talk about it, Israel Adesanya talk about it. Being able to visualize where you're going and getting there and being there before you actually get there is a huge thing. And back when I was with other organizations, I didn't even want to think about the fight. I didn't want to think about the fight till fight night, which now I've seen it. I've seen everywhere this fight can go with me and Larissa. I've seen good, bad, her dominate me, like coming out of bad stuff. Like, I've seen it all, and it feels good to you already be there and fight not be the first night you get in there, So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Can I do one follow-up?
Yeah, go ahead.
That's cool. You mentioned earlier, kind of like this newfound discipline that you feel like you have in your fighting career, and making sure you're mentally ready in and out of the cage, right? So do you feel like that's kind of an element of mixed martial arts that doesn't get talked about enough, in terms of, being able to mentally prepare yourself for battle outside of the cage, and not even just in practice and all that?
Absolutely. I think the mental game is so big, and whether you're a man or a woman, like, men actually struggle with it more with their mental health and stuff outside of the cage. But I think it's very, very important. What's going on outside of the cage will show up inside the cage. The cage tells no lies, so whatever you've got going on will expose you once you get in there. So you got to really take care of your mental health on your everyday, so you can have the best chances and the best opportunity for success when you do get in there.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
My last question to you, and happy Wednesday.
Thank you.
Why are you doing this? Why do we fight?
Why do I fight? My why is huge. I got 3 brothers. I come from a place that's kind of lower community. It's rough, a lot of gangs, a lot of drugs. Like, I was somebody who was supposed to end up with 5 kids, drug addict, in and out of jail. I partied a lot before this. I've had a lot of friends pass away from overdoses and gang violence and just all kinds of things. And I wanted to show my brothers that we could do this. I wanted to show my brothers that no matter what our cards were that we were dealt in life, that we could still succeed. And it didn't matter how hard things got. Like, you can do something so hard and still come to the top, and just as long as you follow your dreams, as long as you fight with all that you got, like, we're incredible people, and this is why we do it, and that's why I do it. It's for them. I also want to make sure because my dad passed away when I was younger, so I want to make sure his last name has something good behind it. So once this is all over and we're all old and stuff, people are going to look at that last name Leibrock and say, wow, she did something great with that. So yeah.
And what do your brothers think about Sis?
They love it. my brothers are my biggest supporters. They're my biggest fans. And I just got a really nice text from one of my brothers who's had an extremely hard time. I mean, all my brothers, unfortunately, have had their own trials and tribulations, and none of them are even over the age of 26 yet. But, you know, I got one from my brother who told me he's been sober for a year, and, you know, he's really changing his life, and he could care less about the fame and the money that I've already shown him, like, the path, and that he's so proud of me, and he's so honored that I'm his sister. And yeah, so yeah, they think it's great, and they love it, and two of them will be here actually, so, and that's cool. They get to see places just like I get to see places, but my brothers, my nephews, my nieces, all of them are just so proud and excited to see me do my thing.
I feel that level of emotion coming from you as you answer these questions. My final one to you is, what would that little girl growing up in that rough neighborhood, you know, in all those situations that just lost her dad, think about, you know, the woman that's standing in front of us today about to go compete on Friday?
I think she would be extremely proud, because there was moments there when I was a little girl when I would just be like, man, why? Like, why me? Why all these things are happening? So, you know, I think about that all the time. Like, you hear the sayings where, like, be the adult that the younger you needed, and I try to be that, not just for myself, but the kids I mentor in my gyms, my brothers, my nieces, my nephews. But I think that she would stand here today and be like, wow, I'm extremely proud. You know, I'm a strong, confident, like, ready to get it in the world. And I think that I've wrote all the wrongs that have ever happened to me in my life, and I've showed nothing but perseverance through it all. And I think, yeah, that little girl would just be there smiling and, you know, happy.
Congratulations. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. That's all we
You guys
got.
really got to stop making me cry, man. This is getting ridiculous. No, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
I was about to be like,
Thank you. Thank you.